favorite scary movie.
Hollywood Pictures and Amblin Entertainment present Arachnophobia.
Arachnophobia is kind of a Spielberg movie, but also not. He produced it. It's directed by his longtime producer, Frank Marshall, but it has a lot of the DNA in there. And didn't expect much from it, turned out to really love it. And joining me, the first collab for ScaryMania V, is returning from the Alien 3 review. It's TJ from Blacktastic Media. TJ, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure, my man.
I had a really great time talking about Alien 3 with you, a movie that's in a lot of ways misunderstood. But
Right.
Arachnophobia, I think I don't want to say underrated. I think that term gets thrown around quite a bit. I'll say this movie is overlooked because
Yeah.
I feel like in a lot of ways, I feel like in a lot of ways this one got swept under the rug. It's got a good cast. It's got a lot of creative sequences. It's scary,
Mm.
but not so scary to like turn off like people who are not necessarily into horror. There's scary moments for sure, but there are also fun moments too. I said to myself, this is kind of like Jaws with spiders a little bit.
Yeah, it's has Jaws DNA, also a little bit of Jurassic Park. It's a great creature feature. And the common insect, such as a spider, everybody seems like in the world has some type of fear, and in this case, even more. It's I didn't see this coming. I seen the trailers years ago, and what I used to do with my cousin, we used to movie hop. Like in the summer months, my parents would drop me and my cousin off at the movie theater right before 10 o'clock in the morning. And in the summertime, theaters open up at 10, and we're there from 10 to at least 10 in the morning. We pay for one movie, we synchronize our watches, and we'll see one movie, then we sneak into another movie, and then a third movie. We used to see three movies in a day. And that was one of the particular moments when we snuck in the scene Arachnophobia, and it just blew our minds.
That's goals for me. That's definite goals. If like it's so weird the culture now where I would do double features sometimes. I did a double feature one time in 2018. It was
Uh-huh.
arachno or not arachnophobia, that's what we're talking about now. In 2018, I did Annihilation, the Alex Garland movie, and Game
Okay.
Night. They came out the same weekend, and so I'm like, I have
Yeah.
enough time to see both. So it is wild going from Annihilation, trippy, sci-fi, very much out there, for lack of a better word, to Game
Hmm.
Night. Fun, murder mystery sort of kinda. Jesse
Right.
Plemons being Jesse Plemons it was definitely a clash for sure, but I
Yeah.
love that you used to do that. That sounds amazing.
Oh man. It
But
was
as
the thing to do when you were preteen or teenagers, you know, because the theater was so crowded back then during the summer months. And that was around the time where teenagers were working at the theater. They didn't care. You had a couple of adult guys that try to like, police everything, but for the most part, they didn't care. And as long as she was quiet, didn't cause any ruckus, we spent much money on concessions. Not like we wasn't paying for anything, but we paid for the first feature, and we had a little Casio watches back then made out of plastic, and we'll read the paper. There was no internet at the time. We'll read the paper and make sure we had our times correct. We'd check the marquee and everything, and then like clockwork, boom, get in line because Blockbusters then there was a line outside and also inside the theater. So we'd be one of the first ones to get in line inside the theater because we was already inside. And it was perfect. Like one of us had to go to the restroom, the other one would stay in line or go get food or things like that. Because you got to remember, during this time, there was no assigned seating. First come, first serve. So you want to be at least the first 40 or 50 people in line to get a good seat right in the middle, average halfway, down the aisle. for blockbusters back then. So, and you had to bring like jackets and stuff to hold seats for family members that was running late. That's the way the culture was back then. And frankly, I kind of miss it, It was part of the experience. And and Arachnophobia is a unique story because we had some time to kill. So we snuck in for a little while just to check it out. And it was the ending. And I was like, wow, this is exciting. Look how big that spider is. We had no clue how deadly that spider was. We was watching going, wow, that's like a common tarantula. So we were watching going, interesting. And so again, had no clue how deadly that spider really was. So when we went back to see it from beginning to end, oh man, that movie again is slept on. Um, it should have been a bigger movie. It should have made more money back then. Frank Marshall did an incredible job directing that film. Outstanding cast, and I've seen it at least 2 or 3 times in theaters. And the minute it came available on home video, I purchased it that first week. I love this movie.
Oh, another one of his directed films I wanted to bring up, and I don't know when I'll ever will again, is the movie Eight Below, starring Paul Walker. It's about he works in the,
Oh,
I believe, the Arctic or the Arctic Circle. It's one of the very cold places north or south pole. He has
hmm,
to abandon his sled dogs behind because the weather simply gets too cold for him to stay. And so he has
right.
to get back to find his dogs. And it's Disney in the 2000s were really experimental in trying to figure out like what was going to work. And so their live action division was just doing a ton of sports movies and a ton of like live action stuff. They gave David Lynch a budget to do The Straight Story, which is going to be a review for the 99 Project coming up very soon. So, long story short, Eight Below is very good, and I recommend that one as well. I don't know when I'll ever have the chance to bring it up again. Me,
Right.
mental note, that's going to be a better than you remember review for this channel down the line. As far as Arachnophobia goes, the basic plot is that a family moves to this very small town in California. It's fictional, but it is a very small town in California. The patriarch is played by Jeff Daniels. He's set to be the
Hmm.
town's doctor. However, the actual town doctor pulls the rug out from him and says, I'm actually not retiring, I'm staying on.
Yeah.
And so Daniels' character, not really knowing what to do, starts beginning to notice the spider problem in the town.
Hmm.
The spiders are killing off residents left and right, and the doctor's like, spiders, come on, like this guy and trying to slander Daniels' character's name, but Daniels begins to start noticing a pattern, along with a scientist and John Goodman playing the greatest exterminator you would ever see. I cannot do it justice. Th this is such a fun movie, like I said, but it never loses sight of the fact that it is a horror movie. There are
Right.
several scenes in the movie I could reference, but I'll bring up this one. So tense. It's where Jeff Daniels' character's daughter is over at the neighbor's house and they're reading books in the room. TJ, I think you know the scene
Oh
I'm
yeah.
talking about.
Oh yeah.
Spider crawls down the room. I'm like, oh God, this is not going to end well because we know what the spiders can do. Like one bite and you're dead. And so
Go on.
Spider crawls down, lands on the floor, and just when you think the spider's about to bite, they get up and are about to leave, and a book falls on top of the spider, killing it. I can't describe to you how tense that scene was for me because I'm like, oh God. And I'm like, I'm not too terribly afraid of spiders, I'll admit. But in that moment, I was afraid, like deathly afraid of spiders for like 5 seconds. And there are more sequences like that
Oh
too.
yeah.
If you're afraid of spiders, this movie's going to suck to watch.
Yeah. I tortured people over the years who are absolutely afraid of spiders. This movie, to them, is worse than Jaws or anything else. And that scene you were referencing earlier, I remember they was reading that book or playing the game going, dun, 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 ah. That even added a little intensity to it. I was like, wow. But that scene was great. My other favorite scene was the teenage daughter taking a shower, and
Oh,
she had the suds on her, and she was taking a shower and doing everything. And you're in the shower, you know this. You can't feel nothing on your body besides the water and the suds. So when that spider came down and got on her naked body and was sliding around on the water, you talking about being on the edge of your seat and clutching like this, going, "Oh my God, oh my God." That's the worst thing you want to do is be nude and be in peril, whether a killer's after you or an animal, in this case, a deadly spider, and then flushes down the drain and everything. Like I said, it's just this movie has so many moments that are just spectacular with intensity and thrills.
the movie is efficient in a way that I really do appreciate because it shows you what these spiders can do. Like literally, it's like one bite and you're done. There's not like a, oh, I can walk this off. It's like, and you're dead. Like you're done. And so it establishes that precedent. And then from that moment on, whenever you see a spider, you're like, you need to run. Like you don't need to walk, you need to run out of the room. Preferably get a can of Raid if that's gonna help. And I don't
Yeah,
think that it will. I think there I don't know where to bring this up, so I'll just bring it up here. The reason I thought of Jaws when referring to this movie is with the doctor and then the sheriff and then just the general attitude of the town. I was afraid the movie was going to pivot into the town doesn't accept him because he's from the city. And I'm just like,
yeah,
lazy booking, but they actually kill that off rather quick. I think about 45 minutes
yeah.
into the movie, the older doctor gets bitten by a spider. Smell you later. I'm glad that guy got the axe. And then they just make fun of the sheriff for the rest of the movie. Like when the spider
Right.
is found in the cereal box and he ends up dead and the sheriff like panics and freaks out. I believe it was the not the scientist with the accent, but the one in the glasses where he says,
Hmm.
must have met the sheriff for the first time. I love that line so much because I was afraid
Yeah.
we were going to be stuck with these people and like it's Mayor Vaughn all over again. But no, they actually
Yep.
deal with it rather quickly. So I appreciated the
Oh
efficient.
yeah. And it was comic genius, man, because as a teenager, I think my favorite death was the doctor. He got bit on the toe. He's like, ouch. And his wife said, "Oh, honey, it's just a little spider." He said, "Spider? Feel like a goddamn cougar." Damn, damn.
And then he literally keels over dead. Because the thing about these spiders is that they're like we see like the queen spider I'm going to
Yeah.
call back to aliens like the queen spider. We see the queen spider, but most of the spiders we see are like these little things. And the movie does a good job of establishing that even though they're small, they're like they're like loaded to the gills with poison. So
Yes.
one bite you're done. And they're so small you can't notice them. Or you almost can't notice them. They can be in your shoes, they can be like they can be anywhere.
Oh man.
So it's like
You
it's like the perfect killer almost, kind of like the xenomorph. And I don't mean to bring up an alien reference, several, but I mean that's what my mind is going to.
Yeah, because you had the queen, you had the soldier ants, so to speak, the drone spiders, because like I said earlier, me and my cousin stuck in previously and we only seen the end and we went back and seen the whole movie. Going to a different country and seeing what that one spider can do, it will kill you. They put you in a coffin, it climb back in and cocoon the body. I'm like, wow, that really freaked me out what that spider can do. And when that spider finally got out, it climbed up through that little hole and it mates with a common house spider up in some little barn attic. And they spawn the most deadliest spider ever to man. And I thought that was just brilliant writing, real simple, and it made sense. And this movie has scenes galore that, I mean, the whole theater was screaming, jumping out of their chairs. It was one of my best theatrical experience ever for a movie of this caliber.
I would have loved to have gone with you because I think we would have both had a really good time.
Oh man.
But one thing that I touched on previously, John Goodman in this movie is awesome. I think John Goodman
Yes.
might be low key one of my favorite actors ever. Anything I've seen him in, he is just absolutely
It's great.
crushed it. Like Walter Sobchak in The Big Lebowski. He's
Yep.
currently Eli Gemstone in The Righteous Gemstone's a fantastic TV
Hmm.
show on HBO. Give it a watch if you haven't. Uh, just he was in 10 Cloverfield Lane. He was terrifying in that
Oh,
movie.
yes,
And
yes.
and here he's kind of a goofball, but like a competent goofball too. Like he talks very much like he knows what he's doing and kind of does, but he also gets in his own way quite a bit. But he's also competent enough to where you're like, why is this guy even employed? But you get it. Like you get why
Yeah.
like he knows enough to like know how things work. And he was one of the ones that was like, this is a web. And so he like starts tracing out the web. And so it's not a case of a blind squirrel finding a nut. Like he gets the kernel of the idea and traces it to its logical conclusion.
Yep.
He, Daniels, and the two scientists form a bigger version of the Amity Island crew, and they decide, okay, this is what we've got to do. So that level of okay, this is the threat, we need to take it on now. Like again, the movie is very silly at times, but it never forgets to not take the threat seriously. It's a
Hmm.
delicate balance this movie achieves between being very funny, but also very scary and also being serious. And it never loses any of the
Never.
credibility in the process. Frank Marshall should direct more movies. I guess that's the point that I'm trying to.
Yeah. Yeah. I even enjoyed Congo when it came out years ago.
Haven't seen it, but I've heard nothing but bad things.
You know what? I mean, during the time, CG wasn't what it was now. We're so used to Planet of the Apes. There's a man in a monkey outfit in this movie, but the third act kind of loses itself. But the first two-thirds, it felt like a Spielberg movie. The threat was real. The island was scary over in Africa and things like that. But I know you heard bad things about it. Give it a watch. You might have different feelings. Just like a lot of people don't like Alien 3. You and I are pretty fond of that movie. So, but I really enjoy Congo. And Frank Marshall, he's like a child of Spielberg. His movies are so similar, and you can tell he learned from the best.
Yeah, Marshall also had a hand, I learned earlier today, in directing From the Earth to the Moon, which is a great documentary series on the
Mm,
space program. I have a soft spot for movies about the space program or documentaries about the space program. So that's
okay.
I forgot about it, but I just remembered it right this second. But Marshall's really good. And like I said, there's a lot the spiders feel real because a lot of them were pretty much real. I want to shout out
Yeah.
TJ. I don't know if you've ever heard of the show Mythbusters. It was on the
Yeah, I
Discovery
remember
Channel.
that.
One of the co-hosts on there is named Jamie Heineman. He's the one with the mustache and the beret. He worked on
Hmm.
this movie and he developed the spiders, a lot of the spider designs for this movie, which, I mean, considering how dry his humor was on that show, it makes all the sense in the world that he had a hand in doing that.
Makes
So
sense.
I was looking up stuff about the movie for this review, and that was one of the ones I'm like, Jamie Heineman, like that Jamie Heineman? And I had to
I
look
would
it
have
up,
never
and
known.
sure
Yeah.
enough, yeah. I knew that he had worked in special effects beforehand, but I had no idea it was like this. So that was cool little factoid. I guess the point I'm trying to get at is that the spiders look legitimately like pretty terrifying. Like all of them, from the smallest ones to when you see the queen.
Yes.
And then it leads to just an awesome final, not final third, but like the final 15 minutes where it's Daniels in this wine cellar alone against an armada of spiders. And I was just sitting there like, come on, you got it. You got to fight your way out. And he finally figures out fire. They're not good with
Yeah.
fire. And so he
Yeah.
just he just launches the queen spider into the fuse box. And when that happened, I was like, yes! I was so happy and so excited that when that happened. And just
Yeah.
that,
Our theater cheered. Man, like I said, that third act, when he fell into the wine cellar, was something remarkable because he's the one that has arachnophobia. And his wife, used to tease him all the time. His little daughter wasn't scared of spiders. Man, this big grown man was absolutely terrified. Even laying in bed, he sees a coat hook and it looks like a spider. He's deathly afraid. He's like, gets up and hits it. He's like, oh God. He was fantastic. And that wine cellar scene, when he falls through, those spiders are crawling down near his face. He's like doing like this and like this. He's hitting it with bottles. And when he's lighting that flame up through the wine cellar, and that spider reflection of the fire in all eight eyes terrified me. It just sat there and stared at him. And you can see the reflection of fire in all the eight eyes of the spider. The way that it moved, he'll do a flame, the spider will move. He'll do it again, it'll move this way. That was some of the freakiest, scariest things because spiders are generally scared, but when they look like a tarantula, when they're big and furry, that's what gets me. It's just, my cousin was so scared sitting next to me. He put his legs up on the chair and had his arms around his legs and up on his knees. His knees was in his chest. He was so scared. And we're teenagers.
He was
And,
like fetal position Jones and all that.
and this movie was great. And then it's a great date movie because that same weekend, I loved it so much. I took my girlfriend to go see it, and let me tell you, she was all over me because this movie is just that great. And my mom is scared of spiders. I took my parents to go see it. I kept going weekend after weekend, taking family members, and I just sat back and watched their reaction. This movie is awesome.
Yeah, it's getting an amazing grade from me. I don't want to call this underrated, so I'm going to call it overlooked.
Yeah,
It's it's got all the DNA of like prime cut Spielberg. It's strange that he
yep,
did not direct this one. I'll have to look it up later to see like why he was not involved. He might have been working on something because this came out
could have
in
been.
90. I think in 89 he had just wrapped up The Last Crusade, so maybe that has something
Yeah.
to do with it. Spielberg was a busy man, like in that era,
Hmm.
so I'm sure it was something work related, but he's subtly preparing himself for 1993, where he just had the greatest year of any film director of all time, directing Jurassic
Yes,
Park and Schindler's List in the same year. So, but that's a whole nother
amazing.
story for a whole nother time. But Arachnophobia is awesome. Go and watch it, get the physical media of it, stream it, do whatever you can. It's one of those movies where it's scary enough to where you go like, okay, yeah, that's pretty intense, but not so scary
Hmm.
to completely turn you off. It's like I subscribed to this YouTuber named Matt Draper who recommended it as one of the horror movies, like a gateway horror movie. And I
Oh
recommend
yeah,
and I agree with that sentiment 100%. But thank you
yeah.
so much, TJ, for joining me for this. It was a great time
Oh yeah.
reminiscing on your memories of seeing this in theaters, and FOMO definitely feeling for real in this moment for sure.
And plus, one thing this movie does great is the score. Whenever John Goodman's character would show up, the music would change to this little upbeat, weird, kind of quirky music.
I
And it
noticed
took the movie, yeah, out of the scary moments. Like, oh. And then he's trying to spray it with the bug spray, and it's not working. The spider's moving back and forth. He's playing dodgeball with the spider, and he finally just steps on it and just like this, yeah, I'm the man. I'm bad. But the score has a lot to do with making it scary and not scary throughout the film. It's very tricky, but they pulled it off.
shout out to Trevor Jones, who was the composer on this. He went above and
Oh,
beyond.
yeah.
But
Great
thank
job.
thank you so much, TJ. I've been looking forward to this for quite a while. Your channel's linked below. What have you got coming up? I know you must be working on some film related, some film you're working
Oh,
on.
yeah. Working on two films concurrently right now. But just recently, a good friend and I started our own new series called Q&A with TLA. It premieres this Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on my YouTube channel. It's two buddies that love film that dives deep into the lore of films. And since I'm older than him, he lives vicariously through my stories of me going to the cinema years ago to see all these blockbusters or movies that now has shaped the culture of our very fabric. But it's called Q&A with TLA. It's a brand new series that premieres this Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So be sure to check that out. It should be a fun ride.
Yeah, it'll be linked in the description. Go give TJ a subscribe. It is well deserved. But but Scary Mania 5 is just getting started, and I thank you all so much for watching. The 90s madness continues apace, so stay tuned.
Yeah.